Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say once again joined by my co-host, Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Now, I think it'll be good afternoon to you, Richard.
And good evening to you, Geoffrey.
It is evening indeed. Viewers, Layers of the Onion, episode 231. Before we get into the episode, um, we can advise that the Airline Pilots Association of India, ALPA India, has been formally invited by the Director General of Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the AAIB, to join a crucial consultation meeting in New Delhi. The meeting, in fact, is being held today and will explore ALPA's India's potential role as subject matter experts in accident investigations, with a particular focus on the ongoing inquiry into the Air India Flight 171. ALPA India has welcomed the invitation, underscoring the value of incorporating pilot expertise into the investigative process. The association highlighted that the invitation reflects recognition of its professional knowledge, operational experience, and enduring commitment to enhancing aviation safety in India. ALPA India expressed confidence that its involvement would strengthen investigative procedures and contribute to improving overall aviation safety standards. Richard, that's good news.
Yeah, good news indeed, and a clear step in the right direction. I do hope that the AAIB explores the potential role of ALPA as subject matter experts, SMEs. They can give a lot of help to the investigation. And I hope that they also, as SMEs, have access to all the FDR and CVR and maintenance data, and they get fully involved in the ongoing investigation. And what I also hope does not happen is that the AAIB hold the ALPA SMEs at arm's length in the investigation and ask them just to take a position on isolated aspects of the investigation without being fully briefed and fully involved with the data. And I hope it's not simply a ploy to not lose control of the investigation to an independent judicial inquiry. This move will certainly appease the Pilots Association, but it does not answer other questions like the potential conflict of interest in that three DGCA staff members are involved in the AAIB investigation.
Yeah, you raise a very interesting point, Richard. Certainly, if they're asked something, just one particular question with no context, it's of no real benefit whatsoever. So,
Yeah, so we'll have to see how it plays out.
indeed. So, Richard, we've had some very positive feedback about your research into Air India. P. Carter Electric, you guys are on your A game. What another can of worms you have opened. Is some of the high maintenance issues due to the nature of the build of the 787, or is it Air India? And Guy UK, wow, you two returned the two returned for HMV should set off alarm sirens. What logical explanation for this is there other than poor previous maintenance? If you weren't convinced of pilot innocence before, this on its own should do so. And James Gallo, 6106, fantastic work. You are peeling back the onion one layer at a time. Where did you get the maintenance info? More details around specific maintenance on the crash flight would of course be very helpful, but this is a great start. I always learn something from each episode. Thank you. And Roland Tumblin, a hugely impressive amount of work must have gone into such detailed and well-informed analysis. and to be communicated so clearly as to be readily understood by laymen such as myself. I am from an enterprise computer systems integration, monitoring, maintenance, and operations background. Your knack for this is gold dust in my field, Richard.
Yeah, well, some very interesting and kind comments. To explain the approach we took, what we did was download all the Flight Radar 24 data for the previous year for the entire Air India Boeing 787-8 fleet of 27 aircraft. So that gave us a data set of 13,096 flights. And for each flight, the data entry contains the aircraft registration. And so we can generate a data set for each of the 27 aircraft. And for each flight, we have the actual date time in UTC of takeoff and of landing, so we can work out the actual flight time in each case. We also know the scheduled time of gate departure and gate arrival, so we can work out if there were any significant delays. We also know for each aircraft when the next scheduled gate departure and actual takeoff time was, so we can work out the stopover time between each flight. The utilization is calculated over the last year for the total flying time divided by the total time. That includes all the flying and the stopover time. And it's expressed as a percentage. So 50% would mean 50% of the time the aircraft was in the air and 50% it was on the ground. The average stopover away from the home base is 2 hours 47 minutes. And the average stopover at the home base is typically 8 hours 1 minute. And when the stopover involved a duration longer than 24 hours and the scheduled flight was delayed or cancelled, then we assume some corrective maintenance was being carried out. And when the stopover at the home base involved a duration longer than 24 hours, and sometimes it was up to about 10 days, and when it coincided with the 1,000 flight hour, 180 flight cycle, or 3-month timelines, then we assumed an A check was being carried out. And sometimes the aircraft were flown between Delhi and Mumbai for these checks. And when the stopover involved a longer duration than 10 days and coincided with the 12,000 flight hours, or 2,160 flight cycles, or 36 months, then we assumed a C check was being carried out. And the aircraft was often flown to Mumbai, Singapore, or Abu Dhabi for these checks. And the heavy maintenance visits, the HMV checks due after 12 years, or a very high number of flight hours or flight cycle thresholds, they take much longer and at least 30 days, sometimes much more, and are carried out in specialized facilities. And they exist in Mumbai, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Amman, and Tel Aviv, and they've all been used at different points in time. And the downtime in the last 365 days ranges between 30 and 130 days. And you can tell whether it was corrective or preventative maintenance. In other words, planned or unplanned. Planned is always at the home base or at a specialized facility. But unplanned, of course, can happen at any destination airport worldwide. We will be going into the fleet maintenance in more detail in an episode next week. And in particular, the step change in the level of maintenance on the fleet before and after the 12th June crash.
Hmm. Richard, JDS 509. Geoffrey and Richard, would you give us a deeper dive into aircraft utilisation, percentage, how it's calculated, how it's used by airlines, and its real world implications? What does it suggest that Air India's 787 fleet has uneven utilisation percentage? Thank you for your clear and fact-based reporting. The victims' families and flying public in general deserve better than what Air India has offered us so far. You give us a glimmer of hope. All my best. Richard.
Yeah, well, Jay, airlines have an expected range of flying hours per year for each aircraft in their fleet, and that depends on the aircraft type, the flight hours, the cycles, and the aircraft age. Air India Boeing 787-8 fleet utilization ranged from very good at 54%, right down to very bad at 23%. And the average age of the Air India 787-8 fleet is 11.0 years. The range is from 8.0 to 13.1 years. So the utilization should range from 55% down to 35%, but it should not go as low as 23%. And 6 aircraft were below 35% utilization. And all these aircraft had been in heavy maintenance during the last year. And of course, all were 12 years old or more. So no big surprise. And 4 more aircraft with an average utilization of 39% were also in HMV in the last year. And all of those were 12 years or younger. Actually, only one was 12.0 years. The others were all 11 years. And the real world implication of that is that deferred maintenance was standard practice at Air India. And then there are 7 more aircraft, including the crashed aircraft, which did have a utilization over 40% and an average age of 11.0 years, but were all in HMV, or in one case, retrofit during the last year. And the real world implication is that deferred maintenance shortened the expected timing of HMV by 1 year on average. And for the crashed aircraft, that means it was 6 months over this point in time, and it was still being pushed at 52.7%.
Craig Novy, 2090. My gosh, being a layman, I was stunned by how much Boeing, and I'm sure Airbus, is very deeply, directly involved with maintenance schedules. Mr. Godfrey not only has encyclopedic knowledge, he is also very wise. You two gentlemen are so rare, which is what makes this channel a virtuous standout. It is also on another level, sad. Looking forward to the next episode. Richard.
Yeah, it is indeed sad from when you consider the tragedy of Air India and other accidents. But Craig, many thanks for the kind words. And I have to tell you, you will not be disappointed with the next episode on Air India maintenance on their Boeing 787-8 fleet.
Martin Trudeau, 6948 Richards, asks, why is Air India stepping up the maintenance schedule on the 787 since the crash of 171? This is a good question to ask.
It is indeed an excellent question. And it is because the deferred maintenance of the past has caught up with them. to the extent that 6 aircraft are currently pulled out of service long term and who knows, perhaps altogether.
Hmm. LEL Aviation 9869. Gentlemen, thanks for another fascinating episode offering new insights into the Air India tragedy. I wanted to bring your attention to what could be seen as a smoking gun in regards to this topic. On August 6, 2025, 55 days after the accident, Air India quietly announced that in the wake of a post crash safety audit, it would be ditching the state owned AI Engineering Services Limited for pre flight and daily aircraft inspections, minor repair work, and other troubleshooting activities. Under the stewardship of this company, anyone flying Air India knows just how poorly the cabins are kept, aircraft going tech all the time, and terrible on time performance. It may be a case of adding two and two and getting five, but I feel that this quiet switch is certainly worth looking into. Richard.
Yeah, it is indeed. And we've reported on it before. But this is not a quiet shift, it's quite a seismic shift in the MRO industry in India. And I think two and two makes 22, not five. So we need to change the maths. The news was first reported by Bloomberg, and it suggests that Air India plans, as you mentioned, to internalize its pre flight and daily inspections, minor repairs, and on ground troubleshooting operations. We reported in episode 208 that Air India is bringing maintenance functions back to local in house facilities. And Singapore Airlines, a shareholder in the Air India group, is actively supporting the airline in this transition by lending its MRO know how and helping raise maintenance standards, and especially at the scale required in the Air India operation. $167 million is being spent on a new MRO facility at Bengaluru Airport. And Tata Group's broader airline vision is focused on the end-to-end operational control, quality assurance, and building an integrated aviation ecosystem. The MRO strategy now seems to be pivoting to match that ambition. Air India state, with our fleet expansion, 570 aircraft in total, including a significant number of wide-body jets, India current MRO infrastructure is not equipped to support this scale. That was part of the Bloomberg report mentioned, and that quote is from an Air India spokesperson. Now, Singapore Airlines holds 25.1% stake in the newly consolidated Air India and will provide technical support and advisory services during this transition. This new collaboration signals Tata's intent to build self-reliant, globally benchmarked MRO capabilities, modeled after the international standards that Singapore Airlines already practices. And AIESL is not being ditched completely, but this is nevertheless a seismic shift for the company. And the question is whether they can reinvent their organization fast enough to remain a player in the MRO market. For now, AIESL will still service a significant chunk of Air India's maintenance work. But unless it modernizes rapidly and aligns with the pace of the private sector, it risks becoming irrelevant in the very market it once dominated.
And we have some Air India 171 related questions, Richard. Miguel Barrow 5572. Richard, I would like your honest opinion on why they cleaned up the wreckage so fast.
Well, Miguel, I try to have an honest opinion all the time, but maybe guilty of dishonest opinion at times. My personal opinion on the wreckage and why it was cleared up so fast, it was ordered before the FDR and the CVR were downloaded, and the international investigators could visit the crash site. They did visit eventually, but the clearance was already underway. And I think that is in order to ensure the investigation would be controlled by the availability of the FTR CVR maintenance data and limited forensics of recovered items of wreckage. And you can make out of that what you will.
Yeah. Joe Costiga, 1298. Gentlemen, I sometimes get this mental picture of water actually having accumulated in the parts of the EE Bay, and upon rotation, this water, no small amount, went sloshing around. Is this pretty accurate? I don't see a small bit of vapour or condensation that would likely not cause such a problem, but actual maintenance neglect, perhaps criminal, causing the engine shutdown. This explains the geopolitical silence on the matter and how the Indian AAIB is really in the hot seat with regard to truthfully divulging information. Richard.
Yeah, a very sharp observation. And on your first point, the amount of water required to cause significant electrical damage in the aft EE bay of a Boeing 787-8 aircraft, of course, is not defined exactly, but we do have clues from previous accident reports. And they range from even a few milliliters or a few drops of water bridging energized pins or connectors that has in the past caused an immediate short or failure in the electrics. There are other cases. We had one case with a Qantas aircraft that lost 800 liters of water. And you can get build-up, as you say, of larger puddles of water. That could be several liters, and that will almost certainly soak multiple units, cause shorts, corrosion, and cause cascading system losses. It will be very interesting to analyze the FDR data in detail to find the extent of the electrical damage that was and the timing of that damage. And on your second point, the Air India Flight 171 crash is a tragedy, of course, but the cause has not been officially determined. The truth will come out in the end, and it will become apparent who knew what and when, and what has been made public and what has been withheld from the public. And most importantly, why certain information might have been withheld and by whom. That will also become transparent. And I cannot judge whether this is criminal or not. If certain people have not exercised their professional duty of care, that will be then for the courts to decide whether it was innocent, incompetent, or indeed criminal.
John Isley, 4578. It appears quite evident that the abrupt and extensive maintenance of AI's other 787 fleet suggests that Richard is likely accurate in his assertion that the unfortunate incident involving 171 was indeed the result of maintenance problem. This aligns with Richard's plausible theory regarding water ingress into the rear EE bay, which may have occurred due to the probable failure to implement the legally mandated regulation outlined in FAA AD 2016-1404, 2024 NPRM. Thank you, gentlemen, once again.
Yeah, John, you raise a good point. There is, in fact, a new AD had been brought out on a toilet corrosion, and that's applicable for the entire 787 fleet. So the story goes on. But coming back to your comment, this is only my assertion in the form of a plausible hypothesis and a probable cause. It is not yet proven beyond all reasonable doubt. And accident investigations are phased and slow by design. Early reports, preliminary or interim reports, are usually restricted just to factual data, and information management is deliberate, and accountability is multi-layered. Transparency improves slowly with time. And as we've said earlier, we're peeling back the layers of the onion, layer by layer. But I can tell you, there are already tears in our eyes.
Yes. Now, Richard, we have this question from Ashkok Gupta, 1I9W, and a large follow-up question and statement from Sky King. Richard, Ashcott asks, please see stabilizer fault could have been not fully diagnosed and a temporary fix was done. The fault occurred again as the aircraft nose went up, causing fault reoccurring in more serious way, causing the power bus failing. Now, Sky King has chimed in and said that's a very interesting and highly important point you've raised regarding the stabilizer fault. Thank you for bringing it up. Please allow me to jump in briefly, it's not brief, on this, as it may be an eye-opener in the investigation and root cause search. The AAIB preliminary report does note that VT-ANB had a stabilizer indication fault on the prior inbound leg. That was flight 423, which was subsequently cleared by ground maintenance. If such a fault was not fully diagnosed and rectified before the next sector, there is a real possibility of a reoccurrence in flight. Thus, from a 787 systems perspective, the stabilizer trim system is electrically powered and tightly integrated with the aircraft's primary flight control electronics and power distribution. A stabilizer fault can therefore be symptomatic of deeper intermittent electrical issues, for example, actuator load anomalies or control channel instability that may not always be resolved by a quick turnaround fix. If such a fault reappeared during rotation, it could potentially trigger or accelerate the sort of electrical cascade we see in AI-171-3. One should not entirely rule out the possibility that the stabilizer fault itself acted as an initiator, not merely a symptom. The stabilizer system draws significant electrical power and is tied into the common core distribution. A short, overcurrent or spurious demand signal during rotation could destabilize bus voltages. 4. A stabilizer actuator that suddenly demands abnormal electrical load or a control channel that becomes unstable can cause a sharp current spike or voltage disturbance on the aircraft power buses. On a highly integrated aircraft like the 787, such a disturbance can propagate quickly, confusing control logic and momentarily depriving critical relays and controller inputs of stable power. In that transient, the FADEC could respond by closing fuel metering, or the FSOV control path could be interrupted so that fuel supply is removed. Either pathway could result in rapid engine power loss. For context, the AAIB preliminary report, page 13, records that the crew of the previous flight, 423, logged a pilot defect report for status message stab pos exdcr. Troubleshooting was carried out by Air India's on-duty engineer, and the aircraft was released for the following sector at 0640 UTC. Taken together, this makes the stabilizer hypothesis a credible additional line of inquiry alongside the other plausible pathways we've discussed. It does not contradict the DFDR sequence reported by the AAIB, but it highlights that the initial triggering disturbance might have originated in the stabilizer control electrical domain. Thanks again. Richard, what do you make of all that?
Wow, I think it's a very fascinating two comments. The first one, I summarize or paraphrase. Please note that the stabilizer fault may not have been fully diagnosed. Quite correct. It might not have been, and a temporary fix may not have been adequate, and it could reoccur, and it could cause the power bus failure. And I won't try and summarize the second comment, but it basically says electrical integration. The stabilizer trim is part of the electrically powered and closely tied into the aircraft's primary flight control, electronics, and power distribution architecture. Explains well the intermittent issue that was experienced. It raises the potential initiator role of the stabilizer system because that can draw significant electrical power. And it outlines the electrical disturbance propagation and how it can go from one system to another right through the whole aircraft systems. And I agree with both comments, but not entirely 100%. There's one small caveat I'd like to make, and that is the main battery and the FADEC battery, backup battery, are there to protect against spurious transients. And the main battery and the dedicated FADEC backup battery will hold the bus disturbances back and maintain stable FADEC operation. However, if the disturbance exceeds the design tolerance, or if there is a simultaneous fault in the stabilizer system drawing an abnormal load, then the FADEC control path or the FSOV actuation could still be disrupted and potentially resulting in rapid engine power loss. So I think this is a very interesting line of inquiry and an additional line of inquiry alongside other plausible pathways that we've already discussed. We've been through spurious cutoff discretes, water ingress, or connector faults, or manual switch movements, or FADEC FMU actions, or AC/DC bus collapse. And you've outlined the sequence then of events, which fits with what the AAIB record in the FTR sequence. So I am fully with you, and with my one caveat, I will be adding this scenario to the set of plausible hypotheses.
Our friend Sky King comes up with quite a few interesting contributions. This is about his third or fourth, I think, and they've all been
Yeah,
fascinating.
indeed.
So he knows his stuff. So, Richard, perhaps we can close with these comments. Aster Calix 4126. Thanks again, Richard and Geoffrey, for the update. It feels like an Agatha Christie chapter with Sherlock Holmes-like investigators making observations invisible to the naked eye. Keep pushing hard on this aircraft carrier investigation until every fact surfaces. And Olive, hello. Hey, boys. I've been watching all but a couple of episodes regarding 171. Was wondering if you're going to keep doing the episodes regarding 171 until the final report, or is there a timeline? Hope you'll take it till the end and we'll get a real report or answers. Richard.
Yeah, well, Agatha Christie and Arthur Conan Doyle are great authors, but of course, Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple are all fiction. And Air India Flight 171 is a tragic reality. And the crash, well, it happened and we can't make it unhappen. But what we can do is make sure it doesn't happen again. And Geoffrey, I think we plan to carry on until we know exactly what happened with Air India. And not just Air India Flight 171, but other aviation mysteries like MH370.
Mm.
So, Olive, in answer to your question, we do not know how long it may take, but so God will, we plan to carry on until the end.
We sure do. I think we've created something very special here, Richard. We didn't set out to do that, but that's what we've done. And we've got this fabulous band of subscribers, enthusiasts, lay folks, all sorts of a great cross section of interested parties, whether they be travellers or aerospace engineers, and all making great contributions to this research into what really happened with 171.
Yeah, it's a fabulous community and a privilege to be part of it.
Absolutely delighted. It's just a lot of fun. And on that note, folks, thank you for inviting us into your homes. It's a real privilege and an honour to be that you're watching us. So, Richard, we're going to take the day off tomorrow, aren't we? So, sorry, folks. Sorry.
I think one day a week's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I hope so. We're going to be back on Sunday with the Ethiopian Max crash, and that's again another tragedy with some fascinating and disturbing twists to it. And I really think you'll be very interested in what we've got to say. And then on Monday, as Richard alluded to, we're back with the with part two of the deep dive into Air India maintenance, and it promises to be a really fascinating investigation that Richard's put together. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for what you've done today with answering these questions.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And viewers, please do subscribe to us. Please like us. Please do join our community. Please keep those wonderful comments coming, and please do keep those fabulous questions coming. And we do look forward to your company on Sunday. And please do have a lovely weekend wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much. Take care.